Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jim Bowman from FreyFlyt Industries in Vanderhoof. And just a bit of an update on the 9 axles, progress throughout the province and whatnot. There's a lot of rumor out there. Just this past month, I was reading an article in one of the trucking magazines about 9 axles down in the Okanagan and their 96-foot lengths and how dangerous they were. And I'm kind of scratching my head, wait a minute, when we designed these, they're only 90 feet, and somehow they've grown another 6 feet. So they actually work out to 90 feet, 2 and about 11/16 inches for those still in old measurements. Trucks started out, they had to be 268 wheelbase. There's been some updates on that now, and you're allowed a 260 wheelbase truck, which gives you a little more wiggle room at the back. The original specs, we had to build the trailers to. They didn't want any more than a foot of overhang for the logs at the end of the trailers. And that worked out fine on most of the trucks, but we had a couple trucks that were really heavy on the front end, and to get the weight off the front end, the fifth wheel ended up about 4 inches ahead of center, which put the trailer right at the end of the 27.5 meters, so we couldn't have any overhang on. So that 260 wheelbase truck will certainly help that problem. A lot of development work went into these. Seamus from FP is here today, and they did a lot of the preliminary work and engineering and everything on it. To come up with a plan, there had to be a minimum of 5% road impact reduction over what a BTrain puts out. And when we did the original road tests on them, I think there was everybody in the government out here accompanying us on the road test. They were videoed continuously with a video truck ahead and a video truck behind. And they were stopped and measured a number of times, and we weighed a number of times to make sure nothing had changed during the trip. Driver's impression of the original ones in that, he had driven BTrain in that for years, and logging BTrains, and so we put him fresh on the 9 axle. And he was really impressed by it. He said he couldn't believe the handling on it compared to his BTrain. He said a little more weight behind it. Truck worked a little harder on the hills, but braking was way better than his BTrain was. Off-tracking was a big concern with a lot of the towns. Hear lots of reports in the paper of down in the Williams Lake, 100 mile, and how are we going to get these trucks through town? And when we did the tests on it, on the test runs, the off-tracking was about 6 inches less than what a 57-foot or 53-foot hay rack is. So it would turn inside of a hay rack's axle spread, off-tracking spread. Hear lots of comments about road running. Most of the road running is caused by, a lot of it is caused by, especially trucks like chip wagons and what that have the smaller diameter tires. Puts a lot more pressure on the road than the most of the 9 axles are all running 24.5s. There's a few that are running 22.5s, but that takes a lot of load off, and the load is spread out. The actual axle load, average axle load on a 9 axle is less than what a BTrain is. Same time we were doing the 9 axle test down here, I was just talking to Seamus about it to see what was going on. They were test running a 10 axle chip train unit down in the Kootenays. That was 31 meters, and they're still looking at that. There's areas down there where basically you're hauling loads over top of a mountain from where the chips are available to where they're needed, and there was just nobody could make any money doing it. it was costing you more in time and fuel than what you were getting for the chips. So they were looking at as a possible solution for that. The extra length on the for the 9-axle, that goes right through B-trains now, not A-trains or C-trains, but any B-train now can go to 27.5 meters, which means they didn't change the package length, so like lumber haulers and that, or chip wagons, they can't change the trailer, but it means they can put a tri-drive under it, for, especially in the winter, for safer conditions. Thinking of freight trucks going over the coke and stuff like that, they can pull those with same trailers with tri-drives now. Original trailers, the A trailer, the Trident group on that had to have 60-inch axle spacing. And the B trailer with the tandem group could be 54. That's since been amended, and you can have 54-inch spacing on the lead trailer. That was done to accommodate companies like Peerless that had 9 axles already in Alberta. They were on 54-inch spacing, so they would be able to bring them over and use them. We stayed with 60-inch spacing on ours because the reports we got back from the drivers is they liked the stability better with the 60-inch spacing, and we had toyed with the idea going to 54 and then shelved it. We have some updated maps. 9 axles are pretty much right through the province now, right from Fort Nelson right down to the U.S. border. Between Canfor, Tolko, West Fraser, Mercer, Arrow, they've all applied for and got approved for routes. And just this weekend, Highway 5 out of Kamloops and that up and the far end of 16 East was opened up this weekend. It was applied for, but they were doing all the bridge testing yet, and that finally finished and everything passed. And I believe as of Friday, it was opened up as a 9-axle route. 9 axles through the coke now. A lot of wood transfer work and companies that are logging up on top of the coke, either going into Kamloops in that direction or going down to the coast, can use the 9 axles there now, which make it a lot safer in the winter. And I think Trish printed off some of the new maps. The one I have is as of January, and the route that was just opened up is just shown as applied for. I believe she's got some of the new maps at the back. They just printed off just today. And so they're available for anybody to pick up. The comments I've got back from companies that are running them, Blue Valley has 4 of them now. Del Chaco has, I think, 3 or 4. Quite a few companies are running 1 or 2. We've bought them up out of Fort St. John and farther south. Feedback we've got from them is the drivers really like them. Say they're a little different to pull than what a B-train is. But we've got a woman that drives for Blue Valley, and she's only pulled 7-axle her whole career. And this spring they asked her if she'd start pulling a B-train. So she was a bit leery, but she figured, well, nothing ventured, nothing gained. It's always, you're never too old to learn, you know. So she went on the B-train, and she had about a month and a half of that, and was getting used to it, and they asked her to pull a 9-axle. And she thought, well, I got used to the B-train. It wasn't too bad. The 9-axle can't be much worse. And I happened to bump into her in Prince here, not literally, just happened to meet her in Prince. My wife was in shopping in a store, and she was telling me about it, and she said she liked pulling the 9-axle way better than the B-train she was pulling. She said, I wouldn't go back. If I was going to go back, I'd go back to 7-axle, but she said that the 9-axle, the operation they're running out there, she said the handle's really nice. Unless you look on a corner, she said with the B-train, you'd always see the B trailer because it basically the same weight as the A trailer. You'd see it peek out back and forth, side to side, just with the rutting in the road. And she said with a 9-axle, you never even see the B trailer unless you look back going around the corner. She said that A trailer stays planted so well, it just keeps the B in line all the time. So that was kind of interesting hearing it from somebody that hadn't been doing it very long and had no preconceived ideas of what it would be. So anyways, that's pretty much the update on what's going on. We'll have a question and answer session afterward if you guys have anything to ask. And what I can't tell you off the top of my head, I can find out and get back to you with it. So.
All right, thank you everyone who's still here at 3 p.m. on a Friday.
Should be heroes.
Rather impressive. So I'll try to make this pretty brief. My name's Chad Shipmaker. I'm with Valid Manufacturing in Salmon Arm, BC. I'll start with, I guess, just a really brief accelerate. Just share a little bit about Valid Manufacturing. So we're in Salmon Arm, British Columbia, founded in the 90s. We have sort of two main business lines. One is in custom coaches and RVs, systems for those, mostly exported to the United States. So we do slide out systems, leveling systems, kneeling systems. We do the digital dash clusters and entertainment systems. This all grew organically from industry demand, them saying, hey, can you do this? And then we'd hire the engineers and do that, and it just kept expanding. The other sort of core business line we're in is electrical infrastructure. So we're probably the largest manufacturer of electrical infrastructure equipment in Western Canada. It's pretty hard to go through a intersection in BC without having a little Valid sticker on the control box. So we do a lot of kiosks and populate all the electrics inside those. We do the variable speed limit signs that you see on the highways, crosswalk signs, that kind of thing. So those are sort of the two principal areas. Some of you guys might be familiar with a company out of Salmon Arm that used to exist called Newens. Newens Machine was at one time the largest sawmill manufacturing company in the world, and it was locally owned, and it was sold to a multinational, and then sold, and it became a shadow of itself. The reason I'm sharing that is 2/3 of our senior staff are former Newens employees. So the story of Valid Manufacturing, especially in the late 90s and 2000s, was growth through talent from Newens. So we actually don't do a lot in forestry, or haven't. But the owner has committed to diversifying and growing the company. So we are now expanding into other areas and looking for new opportunities. So that's my role at the company. A couple of photos you see up there. We're kind of known as the outfit you call when you need something done, but you're not quite sure who to call. So when the Portman Bridge had ice falling through everyone's windshields, Valid Manufacturing developed the fix, the solution. We're now in agriculture, we're in the film industry in a big way. We do a lot of power generation and transmission, and we've now started manufacturing robots, which is this thing there. But my role, as I say, is to look for new opportunities and new things for us to build. The owner of the company is fond of saying, it's like, Chad, building stuff is easy, but really understanding what needs to be built is the key. So we're looking for problems to solve. And so I actually happen to know Trish from the BC Forest Safety Council. And Trish, I called her and said, would you come to Salmon Arm? And she did. And I introduced her and said, Trish has more problems than anyone I know. And so she went through and said, this is our first biggest problem, and this is our second biggest problem, and went through the list. And we were looking for, which problems would a engineered manufacturing solution make sense for? It doesn't make sense for everything. In some cases, it's behavior change or policy or who knows what, but looking to understand where we could play a role. And she's the one who identified injuries from tarping for bulk haulers. guys falling off trucks, blown shoulders, slips and falls. She said it's a challenge that's plagued the industry for decades, and at the time, this is a year and a bit ago, she said there's no sort of really good industry-accepted solution. So in January of last year, we decided to tackle that, and really did our homework in terms of defining the criteria here for what it is you're trying to achieve. And fundamentally, you're just trying to keep drivers on the ground, right? Keep them safe. Everything else is a little bit secondary, but still important. You need strong load securement. One of the reasons that no other company necessarily has really got a polished, really industry-accepted solution is fundamentally these trucks have been designed to maximize CVSE rules on height and weight and volume, because that's the profit in the industry, right? Is just moving as much fiber as you can. So it doesn't leave a lot of extra room to add stuff on the sides. So you can't add stuff on the sides, you can't make it higher, you can't make it longer, but it still has to arch over 8 inches of wood chips, right? So, and you don't want it to weigh anything or cost anything. So there's some pretty serious design issues there. But we worked on it quite diligently. We have a very big engineering team, and they batted around ideas. And we ended up with a prototype last September. And so we have been testing that prototype since last September. First in our yard, we have it just automatically cycling all through the winter, just opening and closing and opening and closing. And you know, we've had it, we've been doing a lot of research on it, and really the solution that we came up with is really key is the patented swing arm that fits, it embeds inside the top cap of existing trailers, so it's retrofittable. So it nests right inside, so the top of the system is flush with the top of the cab, and that means you have no mechanical advantage because it's completely flat, 180 degrees. So our engineers developed a linkage system, which is kind of in the middle there, where it pops up in the middle just a couple of inches, and that gives you all you need for the actuators to pull the swing arm over the top of the truck. So one innovation is that. The other one is that instead of rolling the tarp, we're actually just guiding it down the outside of the side of the trailer, so it doesn't roll. The same issues that would cause injuries to shoulders rolling cause issues with actuators and motors and everything rolling if it's icy and grimy and everything. So our engineers, who didn't have any preconceived ideas about the industry, because we didn't know anything about the industry, thought there's lots of room down the side, let's put it down there. So we are now at a point where we have OneTouch operation. Those are actual photos. This truck is actually outside at the CNRE if you want to see it in operation. But as you can see, when it's closed, you wouldn't be able to tell there's an auto-tarp system on it whatsoever. It's completely hidden. One of our design principles was to adopt existing rigging and business practices that the industry was already using. There was no issues with tying it down with manual tarps, so if it's not broken, don't fix it. So we left all of those, and then when you hit the button, it extends out and over and has 50 inches of clearance over a mound of chips. And then on the reverse, it's pretty wide open. So you can load right onto or through the swing arm. It's quite open on the driver's side, and you can pile up as much fiber as you want onto the actuator and it'll pull through. We're looking at building these with 3,000-pound electric actuators. So there's plenty of juice there to do that. And then when it gets to be almost closed, it actually, there's no mechanical force driving it closed, it's just gravity. So it just drops on top of the wood chips and hangs there, and so the driver goes along and fastens the load on the outside and cinches it down on top of the pile. If you drive down the road for a mile or two and the load settles, you can get out and you know, cinch it down a little bit further. So we are now, we've been field testing since March with chambers. We've obviously learned things going through that time, but that plus the thousands of cycles we've done in our own yard, we're confident enough to actually release it onto the market. So this weekend is kind of the official launch, and we're taking purchase orders as of today for delivery after Labor Day. but we're pretty excited to be in this space and basically help address one of the most systemic injury concerns in forestry and bulk haulers. So after this, I have just a quick 2-minute video to show kind of from a top down on a tarping station what it looks like when it opens and closes. But I also invite you to come outside and check it out for yourself. We have one of the swing arms down so you can touch and feel. And then we also have it on an Excel truck. I'd also like to recognize Excel for partnering for the show to demo this and to trial this. It'll be on the road as of Monday, I believe, in Prince George, making 6 runs a day. So they can try it out for themselves, and anyone in the area can see for themselves how it's working. But yeah, so I'll show the video, and you guys can come and see us at our booth, or you can ask questions afterwards. So if you want to play the video now. Or not. I mean, this is it. But you can see right now the tarp is opening up the edge. So you can see it's now clearance already. You can also see it's very open frame. Right now you'll see these chains dangling from the bar. We've actually replaced those with fixed bunches so that you can see it. So there's no more dangling and it's proud of the edge of the wheels. The reason it falls like that, as I say, is because it's just gravity, so it's just sitting on top of the chips. Closes up. Well, you'll drive away, and then the driver will walk around, fasten it up, and call it a day, hit the road. So it seems kind of simple, but we've been working on this since January of 2018, so there's certainly some R&D that has gone into it. And really, to come and see it is probably the best way if anybody has questions or interest. But I guess big picture recap, we are looking to be the sort of manufacturer that you call when you have an idea or a problem that you don't know how to fix. We'll look at anything in any sector. Obviously, we have some pretty strict criteria there. It has to be enough multiples that we can justify the engineering to get into it. There has to be enough margin there that it's, we think we can pay off our engineering at the end of the day. And it has to fit with the skill sets we have. We have mechanical, electrical, electronics engineers, and frankly, the owner has a track record of just going and hiring the talent if we don't have it and we need it. But we would love to just have a steady stream of people coming to us with ideas and problems and proposed solutions. And we will be fairly discerning and say no to far more than we accept. But we're always filling our hopper full of new opportunities and ideas. So you can find me afterwards or find us out in the yard and chat. So that's all I got. Thank you so much.
Are there any questions for Jim or Chad?
So you can salute there.
Next time. First question will be for Jim. Come from a long line of being in the trucking and logging industry for a long time. I realize you're from a manufacturer point of view, but what have you guys heard from the licensees as far as engineering on the secondary roads? A lot of guys here will know most of the wood closest to the mills are gone, so we're getting in a lot more of the traction, winch assist type ground, tougher ground. A lot of these roads were designed for 5-axle logging trucks, and now we're trying to get 9-axle logging trucks out further up. There's lots of places where I've been where there's only been 13 feet of usable road on a switchback, even though the corner's designed at 60 feet.
Well, the 9-axles, like any other trailer, they won't do every job. Otherwise, we'd only have one type of trailer out there. There's, we're where customers are taking our quad trailers, you could never even get a 9-axle in there. There's no way to turn it around. You're lucky to get the truck turned around. And we have to look at the requirements for it when they come in. There was really specific, tight requirements that the original test trailers were built under. And it was just a matter of coming up with a design that met all the design criteria that we were given. We had very little wiggle room to move anything as far as moving axles around on a trailer or changing anything like that. Like I say, the A trailer was 60-inch wheel spacing, but there was also an inter-axle spacing between the center of the last axle on the truck and the first axle on the trailer. And that had to be within specs, and you had a small amount you can move in there. And then the last axle on the lead and the first on the pup also had its own inter-axle specs. And you still couldn't go over 27.5 meters. So it was basically, as far as the design end, it was designing a unit for to fill a criteria that we had been given. And you're not just doing it just on a whim. You know, there was really tight building specs and design specs, and otherwise Ministry of Transport and that, and CVSE would even refuse to look at it.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, just from our perspective, from a contractor's perspective, we're getting pushed further back, and I just seem it's all based on rates, even for us for building the roads. You're right. I mean, there's no way a 9-axle is going to come up and turn around where I'm at right now. I can barely turn a pickup around. I just had a couple of questions. I guess the other question would be for Chad. Has anyone brought up to you the implementation of log wrappers being automated?
You know what? That's actually another one we were looking at when we picked auto-tarping instead. One of the reasons, and that's like, I will say it's something that we have thought about. We haven't in any way decided not to pursue it. There's a couple things there. One, we don't know that we have any brilliant ideas at the moment. We also suspect that the solution is potentially quite low tech. Like, you know, a really good idea, simple, affordable, might be the best way forward, and not like a team of engineers that are gonna, you know, charge you. Yeah, being totally transparent, we're not working on that right now. And if somebody has great ideas, we'd be happy to build them, but we don't have better ideas ourselves than what might already be out there.
Have you had any pushback from the OEM tractor manufacturers as to the capability of the tractors and the gradeability pulling the weight that they're pulling, and the maximum grades that are allowable or
We've had
capable with a truck tractor with a 9 and 10 axles?
No, we've had no feedback from the manufacturer at all, or no kickback or anything. I know FP has done quite a bit of research in it, and if Seamus is around, he'll probably have the information to it. There's a recommended grade ability in that for those 9 axles that once you exceed that, you're going to be into a lot more work, you know. But it's like, well, like I say, like any other, they were originally designed to move 4 bundles of 16 for transfer work on the highway. But the reality is, full-phase contractors, they're transferring the wood from the bush to the mill, not just down the highway. And so the 4 bundles of 16, well, lots of guys are doing that. Lots of them are doing that. Quite a number of them are pulling 2 bundles of 33s. And we just sent one set of trailers out last week that had come in for us to rig out with 5 12-foot bundles. And that's a bit of a forest nightmare when you get to loading the B trailer on the A. The more bunk shafts sticking up there, trying to find a place to put everything and still get your bundles in and still get your loading right. So, like I say, it was originally designed for highway transfer work, yard to yard, mill to mill, and is being pushed into all sorts of other areas now. Just a side note, these good gentlemen with their tarping system are set up right behind us, so they invited us over to have a look, and as design people ourselves, we were quite impressed by it, actually how ridiculously simple it is, but it does the job. You know, and that's what you need in any type of logging or anything to do with forestry. You need something that's going to stand up, that's easy to use, simple to use, or it doesn't get used.
Any final questions? Okay, I'd like to thank Jim and Chad for the panel discussion on the new technologies out there in our industry. Thank you very much.